do employers or job seekers need to do to get back to work?
Look, the fourth quarter is where the rubber meets the road in the U.S. job market. And at the end of the day, the fourth quarter is going to be about compromise. And that means compromise from both job seekers and employers. If you're an employee and a job seeker, volunteer not only your current status, but your willingness. Art, you're assuming that if an employer has required a vaccine mandate, that they've also set a standard of what the consequences are for not adhering to that mandate, and that's not necessarily the case.
Is it kind of what your trends are seeing too, Jared?
100%. And let's keep in mind, before this revolution for work from home being the norm, you had to look for jobs in your backyard. Mm-hmm. You're now able to look for jobs anywhere in the country.
The way I look at it is this, and I work with hundreds of different companies in all sorts of different verticals, whether it's retail or tech or finance. A third of their staff never wants to come back to the office again. A third of their staff wants a hybrid model where they can have flexibility to go in and out. And the other third of their staff wants everyone back in the office and doesn't want the other 2/3 to have much of a choice. Well, you have to take the right steps on social media to be seen. 90% of credibility is visibility. And so making yourself known and visible is the first step to employers finding you. They're employing a lot of technology and a lot of automation just to identify candidates online.
Jared, you end up with a very firsthand look, not at the statistical side of this, but individual job seekers and the struggle they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. People are out there hungry for work and trying to figure out how to reinvent themselves. As you said, there's still 20 million people who can't go back to work as a result of businesses being shuttered due to COVID. So now is a great time to consider reinventing what you do for a living.
Why are they hiring contract employees over some of these full-time employees?
A lot of it is opportunistic. There's a lot of good people, talented people who are on the market unexpectedly as a result of COVID rifts or layoffs. And employers are taking advantage of the modality that they can hire contract or contract to hire, the old adage of try before you buy. And that certainly is applying to talent out in the marketplace, particularly in industries where talent isn't typically available in that modality. It is right now.
The problem with AI on a bigger level, aside from just getting us all aligned with being honest about how we're using it, and that we'll delete it if you ask us to, is that predictions based on past hiring will reproduce patterns of inequity no matter what. The machine learns what you teach it.
A cyber attack on a pipeline, a big pipeline. So what's next?
You might find my answer a bit terrifying, but the answer is everything.
That's Jared Coseglia, CEO of TRU Staffing Partners, a firm specializing in data privacy and cybersecurity.
So the obvious ones are things like nuclear power plants. That could be a devastating event if a critical infrastructure was hacked.
Another biggie, you, me, us.
We're moving towards a culture of the Internet of Things, which is the phraseology used to articulate the connectivity between devices and computers. And all that connectivity is perpetuating itself in exponential ways in our society. So everyone's vulnerable.
Jason Scott, WWJ News Radio 950.
Leaving a new hole in the labor force.
The unemployment numbers have been some of the highest ever seen in America. And for the most part, during the peak of the pandemic, the numbers for men and women have been about the same.
Those numbers were around 4.4, 4.5% for both gender categories. But what's happened post-pandemic has been fascinating. That skyrocketed to almost 17% for women in April of 2020 and around 13.5% for men.
Jared Coseglia is the founder and CEO of TRU Staffing Partners. He says looking at the current unemployment rates, the numbers don't tell the full story.
As of April of 2021, women actually have lower unemployment numbers than men. But those numbers are very deceiving because what those numbers don't account for are all the women who have dropped out of the workforce and are not looking for work anymore. Add back in the amount of women out of the workforce, the actual unemployment numbers for women are around 8.1%, which is about 1.5 times where men are right now at around 6.
Coseglia says part of the reason these numbers are so drastically different is the type of jobs that many women had pre-pandemic.
Let's be frank, the pandemic disproportionately affected careers where women were in jobs. So hospitality, education, a lot of these in travel, leisure, a lot of these industries aren't industries that could quickly convert into remote work from home lifestyles. And even if they were, the reality is that most households still lean on women to take care of the children and the household.
That's exactly what happened for Sarah Stone, a mother of 3, juggling her job at a daycare center, her own kids all under the age of 9, and keeping her home in order.
Hands full, totally hands full, yeah.
Sarah says she was first laid off like many others, but after returning to work for a few months, it just wasn't feasible for her family anymore.
I tried to bring home and get as much hours as I could, but with the pandemic and having to be quarantined, or, Braxton having to be homeschooled due to quarantine from his school, it just got really overwhelming and out of hand. So I quit in January to full-time homeschool and manage a household.
The decision to pull herself from the workforce altogether wasn't easy, but with the support of her husband Colin, Sarah says they did what they had to for their family.
It's a decision that we made together. I mean, we had to write down all of our bills, how much that was going to cost a month versus me working and me not working. It only made sense for me to stay home with the children. If I wasn't working due to quarantine or due to COVID, I wouldn't bring home any money to contribute to bills after daycare costs.
She says while she knows it's right for her family in this moment, there are days where it takes a toll on her to be away from a work environment.
Honestly, that's the hardest part about being home and homeschooling these kids by myself for 9 hours a day, because I don't really have anyone to talk to. I can call my girlfriends or whoever to talk to, but it's not the same as going to work and feeling fulfilled in that you are more than just a mom.
Coseglia says it's women like Sarah that play an important role in a work environment and helping to create a more successful business.
All studies show that a more diverse and inclusive workforce, whether it's gender or racial diversity, creates a better work environment, extends the tenure of all employees regardless of race or gender, and generally has higher employee satisfaction.
Sarah says while right now her place is still at home, she wants to return to her job soon, continuing to pursue her career goals. She says she wants to set an example for other young girls that it's still possible to be a mom and a career woman, no matter what the world throws at you.
Employers and employees, they need to evolve in order to thrive in this COVID economy.
Reinvention and awareness of the job market are a must to any employer or employee's future success in a post-COVID economy. Some industries are having more success than others, so knowing how to navigate a new job market is key.
Things are looking pretty good unless you're in the hospitality industry. We lost about 140,000 jobs in December. It's the first time we've seen job loss since the big dip in March and April.
Some areas that are seeing gains are the construction and manufacturing industries and professional and business services, which includes software. It's up 161,000 jobs this month.
This is a great time to be looking for a job, whether you're out of work or looking to reinvent.
Reinvention is something people should embrace. With more time on your hands, now is the time to seek additional training and education.
Number one, get educated. It's the first and number one question that was asked in interviews in 2020, which is, what did you do during the pandemic to grow professionally?
The second tip is to be visible. But with the pandemic, doing that in person is difficult. So be visible online.
Have a strong LinkedIn profile with a good picture, with you smiling, and a clear articulation of your experiences and skill sets on that profile. All employers are looking at LinkedIn profiles.
For employers looking at remote employment, they now have the added ability to open up the talent pool, gaining applicants from all across the country.
The other benefit for hiring remote for employers is we found about a 10 to 30% decrease in salaries people are willing to take for remote employment.
The bottom line is now is a time for growth, whether it's growing your workforce or growing your skill set. The job market is rebounding. Being able to adapt with change may be your key to success in the future.
Now this morning, LinkedIn reports it has more than 14 million open jobs and more than 700 million people on its website.
Michelle learned about some ways to recruit and retain good employees.
Well, welcome to Jared Coseglia. He's the founder and CEO of TRU Staffing Partners. And today we're talking about a big issue in Northern Michigan. Employers can't find employees. So I'm looking for advice for them. How do you find and maintain and keep great employees? What are some tips for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the ways, let's start with keeping good employees, because I think that's on most people's minds right now during the pandemic is, how do I keep my superstars? There are a lot of people who yearn to go back to the office, but there are a lot of people who don't yearn to go back to the office. And I would say most people live somewhere in between. Now, that can be hard for employers to reconcile, especially with different layers of employment and need and responsibility throughout their organization. But finding those balances is going to be the number one way to keep and retain people. In terms of attracting people, having clear policies, having clear cultural staples that can be clearly articulated to candidates is the number one thing that employers can do to attract talent, particularly if you're hiring millennials. People are attracted not just to job responsibilities, but to the mission of the company. So companies that have trouble at different layers within the organization articulating that mission with clarity are going to have trouble attracting new talent. That's what people want to understand. What is the bigger picture that I'm contributing to besides collecting a paycheck?
Absolutely. You got to know what you do. What about jobs that are only in person? You know, we're talking like hospitality industry, things like that, where, you know, you just got to show up every day. How do you attract those employees?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because there's so much uncertainty right now in the world. And so employers have as much uncertainty as the employees do about what's going to happen next. Here's the advice that I would give based on what I see other people that we staff for doing in the marketplace. They're changing their business model. What is appealing to people is, here's what we've done differently. Here's what we've done to change. Here's how we're still servicing our clients and attracting new ones, but in a completely different way. And we want you to be part of this new story that we're telling. The other advice I would give people who have to work in person, respect the safety protocols. There is nothing more unattractive to a candidate or an employer to walk into an interview and see someone without a mask, or see people working at the office that are not respecting social distancing.
Any other advice for employers and you know, the best ways to really get a staff, keep a staff, and move forward in this?
Yeah, you have to invest in your employees. What are you doing to advance the careers of the individuals at your company? What can you point to years down the road that you can say, hey, listen, you'll grow into this and we're going to support you. We're going to provide education or professional development or mentorship programs for you to be a different professional 3 to 5 years from now than you were when you came in. And when you tell that story to employees, that's how you attract them.
That's amazing advice. Jared, thank you so much. Hopefully everyone can take some gems out of there, put that into practice, and not be struggling so much, because it's something we hear over and over and over again here. So appreciate the advice. If you want to learn more about what you do, as always, they can head to our website, 9in10news.com.
Is that virtual interview as good as a sit-down, face-to-face interview?
It's a great question, and I think you have to look at it less connotatively as good or bad and rather different. I'll use the great metaphor. It used to be that we measured people, particularly on a final interview, on polish. You got dressed up, you looked your best, you went into an office. That office was an unfamiliar environment filled with lots of opportunities to be distracted and thrown off your game. And you're putting on a performance in that office for people. Now you're inviting people into your home. You're not necessarily wearing your most polished. People aren't necessarily judging you on how you perform the same way. What they're looking for now is not polish. What they're looking for now is authenticity. And is this person comfortable in their own home in front of a camera talking to our team? And if they are we believe that we'll be able to make them comfortable if we decide to bring them into an office.
How do you make yourself more valuable? So if say 10 people with the same qualifications all want to work from home, how do you make or do a hybrid model? How do you make yourself, and that's your goal, you want to do kind of a half-half. How do you make yourself more valuable? How do you make yourself stand out?
Well, the first thing is you've got to be able to answer the question, what will make you successful working from home? And if you don't have clear methodologies and best practices for what make you successful, and look, it could be as simple as I have a fully dedicated space where nothing happens in that space except for me and my work. Mm-hmm. And just saying that to an employer who thinks you're going to be sitting at a laptop, in your kid's room while you're cooking lunch, not really paying attention on a WebEx, it gives them a lot of comfort. And there are a lot of other things that you can articulate about your ability to be successful working from home. I think what a lot of employees miss the opportunity to do on interviews is articulate what will make them successful and have a positive impact for the company. And instead, what they tend to do, which is dangerous, is talk about what they want and what they need and what they want the employer to give them.
It is a new normal when interviewing for jobs, and part of that change is giving yourself permission as a job seeker to ask a set of questions that are very specific to the times. So I've broken it down into the top 4 things that I think new job seekers who are entering the workforce in the middle of the Delta variant need to think about asking their prospective employers. First, ask about and understand your current and future state for work from home versus the return to office policies. A lot of companies are in flux right now. Some are back to the office full time, others hybrid, others are still remote, but planning to be back to the office in 2022. So understand not only what the current policies are, but also what the planned policies are for the future, and make sure those are commitments that you can make. Second, if you're going back into an office, ask on the interview what are the vaccine and mask mandates and social distancing and COVID testing best practices. If these answers give you comfort or discomfort, you will be better able to decide if this is the right job for you. Third, what are those contingency plans in the event of an office shutdown or a shelter in place? I know it's a worst case scenario, but one that you should be planning for rather than surprised by, and your future employer should have an answer to that question.
The notion of mandated vaccines in the workplace, where's it going to go from your standpoint as you see it?
Well, we did an informal survey of about 1,600 job seekers, and we were shocked to find that 1 in 4 was not vaccinated and did not want to be vaccinated. I was really surprised by that number, to be honest. I thought it would be a lot lower. You're talking about 25% of your workforce that's going to wait it out. But they're going to do so by either saying, look, I'm just not going to come into an office. I'm going to look for jobs that'll let me stay at home, and I'm going to stay at home for my safety. Or you're going to look for people who are not vaccinated, where offices don't require vaccination, where they can come in, masked or not.
I think what a lot of employees miss the opportunity to do on interviews is articulate what will make them successful and have a positive impact for the company. And instead, what they tend to do, which is dangerous, is talk about what they want and what they need and what they want the employer to give them. There's a way to get all of those things by flipping the script and talking about how you will make an impact with them, and thus they can then provide the kind of flexibility that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I think another facet of that, of your explanation, Jared, is that I would say that I would take this argument that one could be more productive working from home, especially being in Chicago, where our transportation and our traffic is so congested. It could take you an hour and a half to go 15 miles. Whether it's on the Kennedy or, the Ryan or the Eisenhower, if you're taking some expressway, or if you're even taking public transportation like the Metro or the L, it always takes longer time. You could spend that time being more productive by waking up, flip it on your laptop, and getting to work.
Or conversely, all that time you spend commuting, you now spend with your kids.
Yeah.
How much of a happier employee does that make you as a result? How much more productive does that make you for working the same amount of hours you'd work in an office, except you've just been able to re-energize by cooking breakfast for your son or your daughter? I think it makes a huge difference, those little things in people's lives. Look, it used to be that most parents who commuted into the office had to look for moments, those big moments with their children to define those relationships. And now it's all about those little moments along the way. Those are going to be very hard to give up.